Snow fell in thick, silent sheets outside the 49th floor of Northbridge Capitol, frosting the city in white, while ambition burned warm inside glass offices. CEO Victoria Hale could buy almost anything: companies, competitors, loyalty. But she couldn't buy one man's time. Every evening at exactly 5:30 p.m., Adrian Cole closed his laptop and walked away, no matter who was watching. No promotions, no dinners, no late-night strategy sessions, no to her. And tonight, as snow buried the streets below, Victoria finally decided to ask the question that had haunted her all winter. Why won't you date me? December, in Boston, carried a particular weight, the kind that settled on shoulders like wet wool, pressing down through layers of cashmere and ambition until only the essential remained visible. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of Northbridge Capitol, snowflakes descended in hypnotic spirals, each one a small surrender to gravity. Adrian Cole didn't watch them fall. His eyes stayed fixed on dual monitors, fingers moving across the keyboard with the efficiency of someone who'd calculated exactly how much time each task required. Around him, the open-plan office hummed with the particular energy of people trying to impress voices pitched slightly too loud on conference calls, laughter that traveled just far enough to reach the corner office, the performative rustle of late-afternoon ambition. "Snow's really coming down," Marcus Chen said from the neighboring desk, stretching his arms overhead. "Bet half the team calls it early today." Adrian didn't look up. "Maybe. Not you, though." Marcus had worked 2 desks away for 18 months. He'd learned that Adrian's responses came in single words when possible, full sentences when necessary, and never with the casual padding most people use to soften workplace interaction. "You're like clockwork. Snow, rain, heat wave, 5:30, and you're gone. Consistency matters." "Sure, but—" Marcus lowered his voice, leaning slightly closer. "You know Hale notices, right? The CEO. She watches you leave every single day." Adrian's fingers paused for half a second, then resumed. "That's her business. Could be your opportunity, man. She's brilliant, gorgeous, and she clearly has a thing for the strong, silent type." Marcus grinned. Most guys would kill for that kind of attention from someone like Victoria Hale. "I'm not most guys." The office layout at Northbridge had been designed by someone who believed transparency bred accountability. Glass walls separated the executive offices from the main floor, creating the illusion of accessibility while maintaining clear, hierarchical boundaries. From where he sat, Adrian could see directly into Victoria Hale's corner office if he chose to look. He rarely chose, but she looked often. Victoria Hale had built Northbridge Capital from a single venture fund into a billion-dollar investment firm in 7 years. She'd done it through pattern recognition, seeing opportunities in data that others missed, identifying talent before it became obvious, understanding that timing was everything. And for 6 months now, she'd been studying the pattern of Adrian Cole. He arrived at 8 a.m. Exactly. He took lunch at his desk. Always. He left at 5:30 p.m., without exception. He declined every social invitation, every networking event, every casual drink, every carefully orchestrated opportunity she'd created to spend time with him outside the rigid structure of workplace interaction. From her glass office, she watched him now. Watched the way his shoulders held themselves square even after 9 hours at a desk. Watched the methodical way he organized his workspace, each movement economical and precise. Watched him check his watch at 5:27 p.m., then begin the shutdown sequence he performed every evening. Her assistant, Jennifer Park, appeared in the doorway with a tablet. "The Sanderson contract is ready for your review, and you have 3 messages from Cancel my dinner with the Mercer Group." Jennifer's professional composure flickered. That's been on the calendar for 6 weeks. They flew in from Seattle specifically. Reschedule. Apologize." Send a bottle of the 2015 Chateau Margaux to their hotel with my personal note." Victoria stood, smoothing her charcoal skirt. "And hold my calls for the next hour." Of course. Jennifer knew better than to ask questions when Victoria used that particular tone. "Should I? I'll handle it myself." Through the glass, she watched Adrian close his laptop at exactly 5:29 p.m. Watched him slip it into a worn leather messenger bag that had seen better years. Watched him button his coat, a good coat, well made, but not new. Nothing about Adrian Cole was new. Everything about him was maintained, preserved, carefully managed to last. At 5:30 p.m., he stood. Victoria moved. She reached the elevator bank 3 steps ahead of him. When he arrived, she was already there, positioned in a way that looked casual but blocked the call button. "Adrian." She kept her voice level. "Do you have a moment?" His eyes met hers directly. Most people couldn't hold her gaze. Something about the intensity made them look away, shift their weight, find sudden interest in their phones. Adrian simply looked back, expression neutral, waiting. "It's 5:30, he said finally. "I know. I watch you leave every day at exactly 5:30. Then you know I need to go. I'm asking for 5 minutes. I don't have 5 minutes." The elevator dinged. Doors opened. Empty car. He moved toward it. She stepped into his path. The air between them crystallized into something sharp. Around them, the office had begun its evening exodus, people gathering coats, making plans for drinks, discussing the snowstorm. No one looked at them directly, but everyone was aware. You didn't work at Northbridge Capital without developing a sixth sense for power dynamics. "My office," Victoria said quietly. Now, it wasn't a request. Victoria's office occupied the northwest corner of the 49th floor, offering views of Boston that made visitors pause mid-sentence to stare. Tonight, those views showed nothing but white snow falling so thick it erased the city's sharp edges, softening everything into suggestion. Adrian stood near the door. Didn't sit, didn't remove his coat. His posture communicated everything. "This is temporary. I'm already leaving." Victoria moved to the windows, needing the moment to organize her thoughts. She'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without her pulse rising. She'd faced down hostile boards and aggressive competitors with perfect composure. But something about Adrian Cole's contained stillness made her feel off balance in her own office. "You've been with Northbridge for 3 years, she began, watching his reflection in the glass. "Your performance reviews are flawless. Your project completion rate is the highest in your division. Last quarter, you identified the vulnerability in the Morrison acquisition that saved us $8 million. I was doing my job. You were doing it brilliantly." She turned to face him. "Which is why I've tried 4 times to promote you. Each time, you've declined. I have my reasons. Care to share them?" The word landed flat. No apology. No softening. Just a boundary, clearly marked. Victoria moved to her desk, rested her fingertips on its polished surface. "I've invited you to 7 different networking events. You've declined all of them. I've suggested coffee to discuss career development. Declined. Lunch to review the Hartfield project. Declined." She paused. "Last month, I invited you to the symphony. The Boston Symphony Orchestra. My private box. You said no." "I did. Most people in this company would consider any of those invitations an opportunity. I'm not most people," I noticed. She let silence settle for 3 seconds. "You intrigue me, Adrian, and very few people intrigue me." His expression didn't change. "I should go. Do you find me unattractive?" The question emerged sharper than she'd intended, revealing more than she'd meant to show. Outside, snow continued its relentless descent. Inside, the heating system hummed, filling the silence with white noise. Adrian's eyes held hers. "This is inappropriate. Answer the question. You're my employer. I'm a woman asking a man a direct question. "You're a CEO who's used to getting what she wants," Adrian said, his voice level but firm. "And right now, you want an answer I can't give you. Can't or won't? Both." Victoria felt something crack in her chest, a small fissure in the careful construction she'd built around her professional self. But those rejections came with explanations, counteroffers, alternative proposals. They came with logic she could process and respond to. This was different. This was a door closing without even the courtesy of showing her what was on the other side. "I need to understand," she said, and hated the slight tremor in the words. "Not as your CEO. As someone who, I need to understand why you won't even consider my time after 5:30 is not negotiable. Everyone's time is negotiable. Not mine." "Why?" The question came out harder than intended. "Why won't you date me? Why won't you even have dinner with me? What is so important that you can't spare 2 hours on a Friday evening?" Adrian checked his watch. 5:36 p.m. She saw something flicker across his face. Not panic. Exactly, but a tightening around his eyes that suggested calculations being rapidly reconfigured. "I have somewhere I need to be," he said finally. "Every night, without fail." "Where?" "That's private." "Another woman? Then what?" Victoria heard her voice rising and forced it back down. "What could possibly be more important than advancing your career? Than building connections?" Then, she stopped herself before saying, "Then me." But the words hung in the air anyway, unspoken but understood. Adrian moved toward the door. "I'm sorry I can't be what you're looking for. But I need to leave now. I'm not finished. I am." He paused with his hand on the door handle, looked back at her. In his eyes, she saw something she hadn't expected. Not coldness, but a deep, settled sadness. "I have a daughter, Miss Hale, and she needs me more than anyone or anything else in this world. That's why I can't date you. That's why I leave at 5:30. That's why my answer will always be no." He left. The door closed with a soft click. Victoria stood alone in her glass office, surrounded by evidence of everything she'd built, everything she'd won. Outside, the city disappeared beneath falling snow. Inside, she realized that for the first time in her professional life, she'd asked for something she couldn't have, and she had no idea how to accept that answer. Victoria Hale hadn't reached the top of venture capital by accepting incomplete information. When data points didn't align, you investigated. When patterns didn't make sense, you dug deeper. When someone said no without adequate explanation, you found out why. She told herself this was about due diligence, about understanding her employees, about protecting her investment in human capital. She was lying to herself, and some part of her knew it. Samuel Wright ran a discreet investigation firm that catered to Boston's business elite. His reports were thorough, accurate, and delivered with enough tact to maintain plausible deniability. Victoria had used his services twice before, once to verify a potential business partner's credentials, once to locate assets during a particularly complicated merger. This felt different. "I need complete background on one of my employees," she told him over a secure line. "Adrian Cole. Start with his current routine and work backward. Time frame? I want preliminary findings in 48 hours. That's fast. I pay for fast." Samuel's report arrived in 36 hours, delivered via encrypted email at 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night. Victoria read it alone in her home office, with snow collecting on the windowsills and a glass of wine going warm beside her laptop. The first section confirmed what she already knew. Adrian Cole, age 34, senior analyst at Northbridge Capital. Exemplary work record. No disciplinary issues. No red flags in background checks. Lived alone in a modest apartment in Somerville. Drove a 9-year-old Honda Civic, maintained meticulously. No social media presence, no dating profiles. Credit score of 781 despite carrying significant debt. The debt was the first interesting detail. Medical debt. Specifically, $47,000 $832.19, currently outstanding, with monthly payments of $800 automatically deducted from his checking account. The second section made her set down her wine glass. Daily routine surveillance conducted December 14 to 16. 5:31 p.m. Subject departs Northbridge Capitol Building. 5:47 p.m. Subject boards. Red line at Park Street Station. 6:03 p.m. Subject exits at Central Square. 6:11 p.m. Subject enters Street Aurora Long-Term Care Center. 8:23 p.m. Subject departs Street Aurora Long-Term Care Center. 9:01 p.m. Subject arrives home. Pattern consistent across all 3 nights of surveillance. Subject visits facility for approximately 2 hours and 12 minutes nightly. Facility staff report he has maintained this schedule without interruption for 3 years, 2 months. Street Aurora Long-Term Care Center specializes in extended care for patients with severe traumatic brain injuries and persistent vegetative states. Victoria's hands had gone cold. The third section contained medical records obtained through means she decided not to question too closely. Patient Emma Rose Cole, age ons. Admitted. The 3rd of October 2021, 3 years, 2 months prior. Diagnosis: severe traumatic brain injury with diffuse axonal injury. Persistent vegetative state. Mechanism of injury: motor vehicle accident. Prognosis: permanent. No meaningful recovery expected. Insurance status: exhausted. Patient maintained on private pay basis. Monthly cost: $6,800. Current total charges: $254,000 plus. The fourth section was titled Additional Family Information, and Victoria almost couldn't bring herself to read it. Spouse: Elena Marie Cole, deceased. Date of death: the 3rd of October 2021. Cause: motor vehicle accident. Same incident that injured daughter. Other dependents: none. The accident report was attached. Victoria read it 3 times, each word settling like ice in her stomach. Single vehicle accident during severe snowstorm. Vehicle lost control on Route 2 westbound near mile marker 47. Driver Helena Cole, age 31, pronounced dead at scene. Rear passenger Emma Cole, age 8, extracted and transported to Massachusetts General Hospital with life-threatening injuries. Front passenger seat empty. Subject, Adrian Cole, was at work in Boston at time of accident. Wife and daughter had been driving to surprise him at his office with birthday cake. It was his birthday. They were coming to celebrate. They never arrived. Victoria closed her laptop and sat in darkness, listening to snow tap against windows. She thought about Adrian's worn but well-maintained coat, his 3 rotating suits she'd noticed now that she was paying attention. His packed lunch every day, his refusal of promotions that would have meant evening obligations. He wasn't rejecting opportunity. He was choosing presence over advancement. He was spending every spare dollar and every possible moment with a daughter who couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't know he was there. Medical professionals said there was no hope, but he showed up anyway, every night, for 3 years and 2 months, through every season, every storm, every holiday. 5:30 p.m. He closed his laptop. 6:11 p.m. He walked through those doors. 2 hours and 12 minutes. Every night, because she was his daughter, and that was what fathers did. Victoria poured the wine down the sink, turned off the lights, and stood at her window watching snow fall over the city. Somewhere out there, in a long-term care facility, a man was reading to his daughter, talking to her, being present for someone who might never know he'd been there. She'd asked him why he wouldn't date her. Now she knew, and the answer broke her heart for entirely different reasons than she'd expected. The next section of Samuel's report contained financial details that Victoria read with growing discomfort. This wasn't due diligence anymore. This was intrusion. But she couldn't stop. Adrian Cole's checking account showed brutal arithmetic. Monthly income, after taxes, $5,847. Rent, $1,2. Medical payment, $800. Insurance, car, $127. Utilities, $183. Groceries, $380. Gas transport, $240. Remaining, $2,917. But the Street Aurora bill was $6,800 per month. The math didn't work until she saw the second account. A savings account that had once held $87,000, his and Elena's combined savings. The down payment they'd been accumulating for a house now showed a balance of $4,193. He was depleting everything. The report included photographs. Victoria told herself not to look at them. Looked anyway. Street Aurora Long-Term Care Center was nicer than she'd expected. A converted Victorian mansion in Cambridge, painted soft blue, with gardens that would be beautiful in spring. The kind of place that charged premium rates because it treated residents like people instead of problems. The photograph of Adrian had been taken through a window. He sat beside a hospital bed, book open in his lap, reading aloud to someone the camera couldn't quite capture. The image quality wasn't perfect, but she could see his expression. Focused, present, engaged. As if the small figure in the bed might ask him questions about the story at any moment. The investigator's notes were clinical. Subject visits nightly. Reads aloud for approximately 45 minutes. Remainder of time spent in conversation, one-sided, physical contact, handhold, and personal care, brushing patient's hair, adjusting comfort items. Subject has decorated room extensively with photos, artwork, and personal items. Staff report he brings fresh flowers weekly and updates photo displays with seasonal images. Victoria set down the report and pulled up Street Aurora's website. The facility's philosophy section talked about dignity, routine, familiar voices, the importance of consistent presence even when consciousness was absent. The current research page cited studies showing that coma patients sometimes retained auditory processing. That familiar voices could sometimes penetrate where medical intervention couldn't. That presence mattered, even when response was impossible. It was probably false hope, but it was the hope Adrian chose to live by. She looked at the financial projections Samuel had included. At current rate of spending, Adrian's savings would be exhausted in 14 months. After that, the report didn't speculate. But Victoria knew what happened when money ran out in long-term care situations. Transfers to state facilities. Reduced care quality. The slow, administrative crush of a system designed to warehouse, not heal. Adrian was racing against arithmetic and losing. But every night, he showed up anyway. Read anyway. Talked anyway. Held his daughter's hand anyway. Because that's what he'd promised when she was born. To be there. To protect her. To never abandon her. Even when there was no hope. Even when the medical community said to let go. Even when staying meant depleting everything he had. Victoria understood ambition. She understood sacrifice for goals. She understood delayed gratification in service of eventual triumph. But this was different. This wasn't sacrifice for future reward. This was sacrifice with no expectation of return. This was love in its purest, most devastating form. And she'd asked this man who was living the most profound commitment she'd ever witnessed, why he wouldn't have dinner with her. The shame settled in her chest like stones. Victoria didn't intend to go to Street Aurora. Definitely didn't plan to watch. But Saturday evening found her in a coffee shop across the street from the Blue Victorian, sitting by a window with a latte gone cold. She told herself this wasn't stalking. Told herself she just needed to understand. Told herself lies that felt thinner each time she repeated them. At 6:09 p.m., Adrian's Honda pulled into the small parking lot. He emerged wearing jeans and a heavy coat, carrying a messenger bag and a bouquet of white carnations wrapped in brown paper. Simple flowers, affordable, chosen carefully. Victoria watched him climb the steps and disappear inside. She sat there for another hour, feeling like a voyeur, before finally leaving. But the image stayed with her. A man carrying flowers to someone who couldn't see them, maintaining a routine that had no logical endpoint, choosing presence over every other possible use of his limited time. On Monday, she couldn't concentrate during meetings. Her assistant noticed, but said nothing. Marcus Chen noticed from 2 desks away and wisely kept his observations to himself. At 5:27 p.m., Adrian began his shutdown sequence. At 5:30 p.m., he left. Victoria watched from her glass office and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. The helpless recognition that some things couldn't be acquired, negotiated, or won. Some things could only be witnessed and respected. The investigator's final report arrived Tuesday morning. It contained one additional detail that Victoria read 3 times. During surveillance period, subject was observed speaking to patient's medical team. Conversation concerned recent decline in patient's condition, increased seizure activity, reduced responsiveness to stimulation. Medical staff presented option of reducing intervention level, DNR status. Subject declined. Stated he would maintain full intervention as long as she's here. Staff report this is consistent with subject's stance throughout patient's entire stay. He wasn't giving up. The medical team thought he should. Economics suggested he must, but he refused. 3 years and 2 months of reading to someone who didn't respond, of one-sided conversations, of hope maintained despite every rational indicator saying it was futile. Victoria thought about her own life, her achievements, her efficiency, her intolerance for wasted effort. She thought about what she would do in Adrian's situation, and realized with uncomfortable clarity that she would have let go long ago, would have made the rational decision, would have preserved resources, cut losses, moved forward. The realization didn't make her feel practical. It made her feel small. On Wednesday, Victoria's executive assistant flagged an incoming employment verification request. Standard procedure, typically handled by HR. But this one made Jennifer pause. "It's for Adrian Cole," she said carefully. "From Whitmore Global." Victoria's head snapped up. "Show me." The request was professional. Routine. Whitmore Global was a major consulting firm, one of Northbridge's occasional competitors for top analytical talent. The verification suggested they were preparing an offer. Victoria's first call went to Marcus Chen. "Do you know anything about Adrian and Whitmore Global?" Marcus hesitated. "I might have heard something." "Specify." "They approached him last week, offering remote work flexibility. 3 days from home per week, full benefits, signing bonus." "I heard it's substantial." "How substantial?" "6 figures." Victoria felt ice form in her stomach. A signing bonus like that would solve Adrian's immediate crisis, would buy him time, would let him keep Emma at Street Aurora for another year, maybe 2. Has he accepted? I don't think so. But Marcus paused. "It's a good offer, Victoria. Really good. For someone in his situation, it's probably the smart move." She ended the call and stood at her windows. Below, Boston moved through its Wednesday rhythms. Above, clouds promised more snow. And somewhere in Cambridge, a man was probably weighing an impossible choice. Stay with a company that respected his expertise but couldn't accommodate his reality, or move to one that offered flexibility at the cost of starting over. At 4:30 p.m., Victoria made a decision she knew was questionable. She called Adrian into her office. He arrived at 4:47 p.m., clearly calculating whether this would make him late. His discomfort was visible in the tension of his shoulders, the way he remained standing near the door. "I'll be brief," Victoria said. "I know Whitmore approached you." His expression closed. "That's my business." "It is." But before you make any decisions, I want you to know that Northbridge can match their offer. Remote flexibility, signing bonus, whatever they proposed, because you're valuable to this company. You've tried to promote me 4 times. I've declined 4 times. Why would you suddenly offer flexibility now? Victoria met his eyes. This was the moment. The choice between maintaining her professional facade or acknowledging what they both knew she'd done. Because I investigated you, she said quietly. I hired someone to follow you, to find out where you go every night, to understand why you keep saying no. The silence that followed was absolute. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Something that looked like betrayal, or perhaps just the confirmation of an expectation. You invaded my privacy. You had no right. I know, because I wouldn't have dinner with you. No. Victoria forced herself to maintain eye contact. Because I couldn't understand why someone would turn down opportunities that most people would kill for. And she paused, choosing words carefully. I needed to know if it was something I'd done wrong. So you had me followed, photographed, my daughter's medical records obtained. Victoria felt her face heat. I'm not proud of how I got the information, but you got it anyway. Adrian checked his watch. 4:51 p.m. I need to leave in 7 minutes. I understand that now. I understand why. And I'm offering you flexibility that would let you be there for Emma while maintaining your career. You're offering me what you think I need to accept your control. The words hit like a slap. That's not, isn't it? Adrian moved toward the door. You wanted something from me. I said no. So you investigated until you found leverage. Now you're using what you learned to make an offer you think I can't refuse. He paused with his hand on the door. That's not respect, Miss Hale. That's manipulation. I'm trying to help. No, you're trying to fix a problem. I'm not a problem to be solved. Emma's not a variable to be optimized. And my answer is still no. He left. This time, Victoria didn't try to stop him. She stood alone in her glass office, surrounded by evidence of her success, and realized she'd just made everything worse. 3 weeks passed. Victoria didn't approach Adrian again. Didn't make offers. Didn't create opportunities for conversation. She watched him leave at 5:30 each day and felt the weight of her intrusion settle deeper each time. The Whitmore offer sat unsigned on Adrian's desk. The financial pressure mounted. Street Aurora sent another invoice. And then, on a Thursday night in January, something changed. Adrian sat in Emma's room at 7:43 p.m., reading from The Secret Garden for the 1,173rd consecutive night. He'd reached the part where Mary discovers the hidden door in the wall. Emma loved this part, or at least, she had loved it once. Before the accident. Before the silence. It was the sweetest, most mysterious-looking place anyone could imagine. He read aloud, his voice steady despite the fatigue pulling at his edges. The high walls which shut it in were covered with the leafless stems of climbing roses which were so thick that they were matted together. He paused to turn the page. That's when he felt it. A pressure against his palm. Subtle. Barely there. But present. Emma's fingers, resting in his hand, had moved. Adrian froze. His eyes dropped to their joined hands. Her fingers lay still now, pale against his skin, exactly as they'd been for 3 years and 2 months. He'd imagined this before, wished it so hard that his mind created phantom sensations. The neurologist had warned him about this, the brain's tendency to manufacture hope, to see patterns where none existed. I'm losing it, he whispered, but then he looked at the monitors. The EEG, the machine that tracked brain activity, showed a spike. Small, brief, but undeniably present. His heart rate accelerated. Emma? His voice came out rough. No response. He waited, barely breathing, watching the monitors, watching her face, searching for any sign that the movement had been real, that the spike had meant something. Nothing. The room settled back into its familiar rhythm. The soft hiss of the ventilator, the steady beep of the heart monitor, the white noise of machines maintaining life. Adrian sat back, released a shaky breath. "Just me being hopeful again," he said to the empty room. "Sorry, Snowflake. I didn't mean to get excited." But he marked the time in his phone anyway. 7:43 p.m. January 18. EEG spike. Possible finger movement. Just in case. Just in case it meant something. The call came at 3:47 a.m. On Saturday morning. Adrian answered before the second ring, heart already pounding, adrenaline flooding his system in the way it did every time his phone rang in darkness. "Mr. Cole, this is Dr. Reeves at Street Aurora. Emma's stable, but we need you to come in. She's showing activity we haven't seen before." He was in his car in under 4 minutes. The drive from Somerville to Cambridge usually took 20 minutes. Adrian made it in 12, through empty streets, slick with new snow, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, his mind ricocheting between hope and terror. Not again. Please not another crisis. Please not losing her. But Dr. Reeves had said activity, not decline. Activity. He burst through Street Aurora's doors at 4:03 a.m., still wearing the sweatpants and t-shirt he'd slept in. The night nurse, Patricia, met him at the entrance. She's in her room. Dr. Reeves is with her. "Adrian." Patricia's eyes were bright. "Go see your daughter." He ran. Emma's room glowed with soft lights. Dr. Reeves stood beside the bed, studying monitors. 2 other staff members hovered nearby. But Adrian only saw Emma. She looked the same, pale, small, still. His heart sank. "Mr. Cole." Dr. Reeves turned. At 3:31 a.m., Emma experienced a series of significant neural events. Her EEG showed patterns we haven't documented since her admission. What does that mean? It means brain activity, sustained, complex activity, not seizures, not random firing, something more organized. Dr. Reeves pulled up a tablet, showed him graphs that meant nothing to his untrained eyes. She's also shown increased response to stimuli. When we spoke her name, we measured physiological changes, heart rate elevation, slight blood pressure increase. Those are indicators of processing. Is she waking up? I don't know. But something is changing. Adrian moved to the bed, took Emma's hand. It was warm. It had always been warm. But now, talk to her, Dr. Reeves said quietly. Whatever you usually do, keep doing it. Adrian sat in his familiar chair, picked up The Secret Garden from the nightstand where it always waited, opened to the marked page. "Hey, Snowflake," he said, voice shaking. "Sorry I'm here so early. But I heard you were causing a fuss, so I came to check on you." He began to read. The same story, the same words he'd spoken 1,000 times. But this time, the monitors showed changes. Subtle increases in brain activity when he spoke. Slight variations in heart rate. Response, not consciousness. Not yet. But something that hadn't existed 3 hours ago. At 6:23 a.m., Emma's fingers moved. This time, Adrian didn't doubt it. This time, everyone saw. A twitch. Deliberate. Present. "Emma?" He leaned forward. "I'm right here, baby." "Daddy's right here." Her eyelids fluttered. The room went silent. Everyone held their breath. And for 3 seconds, 3 eternal, impossible seconds, Emma Cole's eyes opened. She looked directly at her father, then closed them again. Adrian made a sound he'd never heard himself make before. Something between a sob and a laugh, raw and broken, and filled with 3 years of accumulated grief and hope. "She saw me," he whispered. "She saw me." Dr. Reeves moved quickly, checking vitals, documenting everything. "This isn't a guarantee," she said carefully. "This could be a brief emergence. She might settle back, We need to manage expectations. I know. Adrian couldn't stop staring at his daughter's face. I know. But she opened her eyes. She looked at me. Yes, Dr. Reeves said softly. She did. The sun rose over Cambridge, painting snow-covered streets in shades of pink and gold. In room 214 of Street Aurora Long-Term Care Center, a man sat beside his daughter and watched her sleep. Really sleep, not the absence sleep of coma. The real sleep of someone whose brain was working, processing, healing. He didn't know what would come next, didn't know if this was the beginning of recovery or a brief moment before another long silence. But for right now, in this moment, his daughter had opened her eyes. And that was everything. At 8:47 a.m., Victoria's phone buzzed with an alert from her news aggregator. She almost ignored it Saturday morning. Coffee still brewing. The Herald crossword half finished on her kitchen counter. But the headline caught her eye. Cambridge Medical Facility reports rare emergence from vegetative state. She read it 3 times. The article was brief, citing Street Aurora Long-Term Care Center. A patient who'd been unresponsive for over 3 years, an unexpected neural event overnight. No names. Privacy laws prevented specifics. But Victoria knew. She didn't question how she knew. Didn't examine the certainty that settled in her chest. She just knew. At 9:15 a.m., she was in her car. At 9:47 a.m., she pulled into Street Aurora's parking lot and saw Adrian's Honda in its usual spot. She sat in her Audi for 10 minutes, engine running, heat blasting, trying to figure out what the hell she was doing here. She had no right to be here. No excuse. No invitation. She'd invaded his privacy once already. At 9:59 a.m., she walked through Street Aurora's front doors, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the shop down the street. The receptionist looked up. "Can I help you? I'm here to see Adrian Cole." She paused. What was she? Not family, not friend. "I'm his employer. He's with his daughter. They're not taking visitors. I'll wait." She sat in the reception area for 90 minutes. Watched families come and go. Watched nurses move through hallways with purpose. Watched morning light stream through tall windows and paint everything in shades of hope. At 11:34 a.m., Adrian emerged from a hallway. He looked wrecked. Beautiful, completely undone. His eyes were red. His hair stood at odd angles. He still wore sweatpants and a t-shirt. But his face held an expression Victoria had never seen before. Joy so profound it looked like pain. He stopped when he saw her. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. "How did you know?" he asked finally. "The news. She held out one of the coffees. "I know I have no right to be here, but I wanted to make sure you were okay." He took the coffee. Didn't drink it. Just held it like an anchor. "She woke up," he said. For 3 seconds, she opened her eyes and looked at me. And then she went back to sleep. But it was real sleep. Her brain is active, the doctors say. They say they don't know what happens next. But something's changed. "Adrian, that's..." Victoria felt tears in her eyes. "That's incredible. 3 years." His voice cracked. 3 years and 2 months. Every doctor said she wouldn't. Everyone said to let go, to move her to long-term state care, to accept that she was gone. "But you didn't." "I couldn't." He finally took a sip of coffee. They stood in the lobby, surrounded by the quiet bustle of a care facility coming alive with weekend routines. Outside, snow had started falling again, soft, gentle flakes that drifted down like blessings. "I'm sorry," Victoria said, "for investigating you, for pushing, for not respecting your boundaries. You were right, I treated you like a problem to solve instead of a person to respect." Adrian looked at her directly. "Why are you here, Victoria?" The use of her first name startled her. He'd never called her anything but Miss Hale. Because when someone's child wakes up after 3 winters of silence, she said slowly, you show up, even if you have no right, even if you've been an intrusive, boundary-crossing nightmare. You show up because it matters. Something softened in his expression. Not forgiveness, exactly, but recognition. The coffee's good, he said finally. Thank you. Will she be okay? I don't know. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. She's stable, showing continued neural activity. They're calling it an atypical emergence. Rare but documented. They want to run more tests, adjust her care plan, see if the progress continues. What do you need? Nothing. He paused. Everything. I don't know. Take all the time you need, Victoria said. Your job will be waiting when you're ready. No strings, no expectations. Just take care of your daughter, even though I turned down your offer, especially because you turned down my offer. She managed a small smile. You were right about what I was doing. But that doesn't mean I can't do better now. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then nodded once. Okay. He turned to go back to Emma's room, then paused. Victoria, thank you for coming. He disappeared down the hallway. Victoria stood alone in the lobby, holding her coffee, feeling the weight of the last month settle into something like understanding. She'd wanted Adrian to see her as desirable, impressive, worthy of his time. Instead, she'd learned to see him as he actually was, a father loving his daughter with such fierce, uncompromising devotion that it reshaped her understanding of what strength looked like. She left quietly, drove back to her empty penthouse, and sat by her windows watching snow fall over the city. Some things couldn't be acquired. Some things could only be witnessed and changed by. 6 weeks later, Emma Cole opened her eyes and kept them open. The process wasn't smooth. Recovery never was. There were setbacks and frustrations, moments of progress followed by plateaus that tested everyone's patience. But she was present. She was there. Her brain was working, healing, finding new pathways around old damage. She couldn't speak yet. Physical therapy was grueling. But she could squeeze her father's hand, could track him with her eyes when he moved around the room, could smile small, lopsided, but unmistakably real when he read from the secret garden. Adrian took 3 months of leave from Northbridge. Victoria approved it immediately, made it paid leave over his objections, and quietly arranged for the company's health insurance to cover Emma's transition to active rehabilitation. It's not charity, she told him when he tried to refuse. It's investment in our best analyst. I haven't accepted the flexibility offer. I know. It's still here when you're ready. He did come back, eventually. Part-time at first, then gradually increasing hours as Emma's care stabilized. But his boundaries remained firm. 5:30 departure. No exceptions. No negotiations. The difference was that now the entire office understood why. Marcus Chen's desk still sat 2 spaces from Adrian's. But their dynamic had shifted into something like actual friendship. How's Emma? Became a standard greeting. Good. She's saying short words now. Dad was first. Made me cry in front of 3 nurses. That's allowed, man. That's completely allowed. In March, Victoria did something she'd never done before. She established an anonymous fund at Street Aurora for families facing financial crisis due to long-term care. The fund was substantial, enough to help dozens of families maintain private care when resources ran out. The administrator called to thank the anonymous donor. Victoria denied any knowledge. But Adrian saw the paperwork one evening when visiting Emma. Saw the fund amount. Saw the establishment date. Saw the lawyer's name, attached a firm Northbridge used regularly. He didn't confront Victoria, didn't thank her, just sent a brief email. Emma's medical debt cleared as of today. Interesting timing. Victoria's response was equally brief. Sometimes the universe provides. Focus on your daughter. They maintained professional distance, cordial, respectful. No personal conversations, no invitations. But sometimes, when Adrian left at 5:30, Victoria would watch from her glass office and feel something that wasn't attraction anymore. Something quieter, something more like admiration for a life lived with such clear priorities. She dated occasionally, met interesting people, had satisfying conversations, but she found herself measuring them against a standard she'd never articulated before. Would this person show up for 1,173 consecutive nights? Would they choose presence over advancement? Would they maintain hope when all logic said to quit? Most people couldn't. Most people wouldn't. Adrian had, and that mattered more than any dinner conversation could reveal. On a Tuesday in April, Emma spoke her first full sentence. "Read more story, Dad." Adrian called Victoria from the hospital, voice shaking with joy. "She's asking for stories. She remembers the book. She wants me to keep reading." "That's wonderful," Victoria said, and meant it with her entire heart. "What part are you on?" "The part where the garden comes back to life, after the long winter. When everyone thought it was dead, but it was just sleeping. Perfect timing." "Yeah." He paused. "Victoria, thank you. For the fund. For the leave. For showing up that morning when you had no reason to. You would have done the same. I don't know if I would have. But I'm glad you did." They said goodbye. Victoria sat at her desk and looked out at the city. Spring was coming slowly to Boston, green pushing through gray, warmth returning degree by degree. Some stories didn't end with romantic triumph. Some ended with understanding, with respect, with the recognition that love wore many faces. And sometimes the most profound version was the one that asked for nothing in return. Adrian Cole had taught her that, and it was worth more than any dinner date could ever have been. Outside her window, the last of winter's snow melted under April sun. The city opened itself to longer days, warmer nights, new beginnings, and in a rehabilitation center across town, a father read to his daughter about secret gardens coming back to life, his voice steady and certain, exactly where he needed to be. That was enough. That was everything.